Out in the vast, unforgiving Arizona desert, under a sky full of stars, a lone police dog named Rex is mysteriously abandoned on a desolate road, left to face the unknown with no explanation. 3 hours of silence stretch on until the stillness is shattered by events so shocking, no one could have predicted what was about to unfold. When Sarah Whitman nearly runs Rex over, standing motionless in the dark, she steps unwittingly into a web of danger and secrets. This is no ordinary stray. His eyes reveal years of training, pain, and a mission that goes far beyond any normal police case. Inside Rex lies a hidden microchip, encrypted with secret data that could expose the disappearance of a missing detective, a vanished brother, and a conspiracy lurking deep within the shadows of law enforcement. As Sarah and Rex team up, a retired cop reveals chilling truths about betrayal and cover-ups, leading them to abandoned warehouses, hidden tunnels, and a high-security data facility where the fate of many hangs in the balance. All the while, shadowy figures watch Sarah's every move. A mysterious black sedan follows relentlessly, reminding them that powerful forces will stop at nothing to keep the truth buried. With each step closer to the truth, Rex's training and loyalty become the key to unlocking secrets too dangerous to face alone. In a heart-stopping race against time, the team risks everything to uncover the Digital Guardian program, a living security system designed to protect the truth itself. And just when all hope seems lost, a phone call breaks the silence. The missing detective's voice reaches out, promising to reveal the answers that could change everything. This is the story of courage, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a woman and her remarkable dog, a partnership destined to confront the darkest secrets of the desert and bring justice to light. The highway out past Duluth always looked lonelier at midnight. The birch trees on either side of Route 19 were leafless skeletons, black against a pale Minnesota moon. Most nights, only the wind and the odd coyote howl ever disturbed the silence. But on this night, as frost crept over the yellow center lines, a set of steady paws moved with silent purpose down the shoulder of the road. Maverick had been walking for hours, though he'd never say how long, even if he could. His thick, tawny coat showed the marks of a working dog, scars healed over the years, patches shaved for surgeries, a touch of gray at the muzzle. But his gait, even as fatigue threatened to drop him, remained disciplined. He kept to the shadows, nose low, scanning for any sound or scent out of place. Somewhere inside that powerful body, a voice kept repeating a single order: survive. 3 hours earlier, a car door had slammed behind him. A figure he knew only by scent, a mixture of fear, regret, and motor oil, had left him with nothing but the cold and the taste of gasoline fumes in his nose. There was no command to stay, no parting pat on the head. Just headlights receding into blackness and the realization that, for the first time in his life, Maverick was on his own. He could have wandered off, found a farm or a barn and waited for sunrise. But there was something urgent in the way the man had left, something that made Maverick uneasy. He could still smell it, bitter and electric, mixed with a trace of adrenaline. He walked, paws pressing tracks into the frosty gravel, head swiveling with every whisper of wind. Down the road, a battered blue Subaru rumbled along at the kind of speed only a tired local would dare. Hannah Walsh gripped the wheel, her eyes gritty from too much coffee and too little sleep. Her phone, set to speaker, played an old voicemail she couldn't bring herself to delete. In it, a man's voice, her fiancé Sam, joked about her stubbornness, promising her he'd be home by supper. That was nearly 5 months ago, and she hadn't heard from him since. Hannah killed the message, stuffing the phone in her jacket pocket. Her gaze wandered up to the empty road ahead, where the fog pooled in dips and hollows. The radio in her dashboard flickered static, the weather report warning of an early freeze. The town of Duluth was a speck of light behind her. Her parents' old cabin and the promise of a bed waited somewhere past the next bend. She didn't see Maverick at first. He blended with the darkness, only the reflective edge of his collar catching her headlights. When she finally did spot him, it was almost too late. She stomped the brakes, swerving just enough to miss the animal by inches. The Subaru shuddered to a halt. Tires sliding on thin ice. Her heart thudded like a bass drum. She sat still, breathing hard, before slowly looking into the rearview mirror. The dog, if that's what it was, stood perfectly centered in her taillights. Its posture was rigid, head up, ears pricked. Not some stray, she realized. This one looked like he'd just walked out of a police lineup. Maybe military. She fumbled for the flashlight in her glove box, cracked the door, and stepped out into the frigid air. The dog didn't move, didn't growl or back away. He watched her, steady and unblinking. The kind of look that made you second-guess who was in charge. "Hey, boy," Hannah called softly, crouching down, trying to keep her voice gentle. "Where'd you come from?" Maverick gave no sign of fear or aggression. Instead, he walked forward with careful steps, stopping just out of arm's reach. Hannah saw the scars, the muscular build, the faded badge stitched into the old collar. She whistled low. "You a cop dog?" As if on cue, Maverick sat, eyes fixed on her face, as if weighing her intentions. Behind her, another car approached, this one with red and blue lights flickering. Sheriff Alton Briggs rolled up, window halfway down, looking every bit the worn-out lawman who'd seen too many winters and too many broken things. "Evenin', Hannah," Briggs said, squinting past his mustache. "You all right?" She nodded, pointing to Maverick. "Nearly ran him over? He's not local. You ever seen him before?" Briggs parked and stepped out, boots crunching the ice. He knelt and extended a hand, palm up. Maverick sniffed, then sat back, tail thumping once. "He's got the look," Briggs said, turning the collar over in his fingers. "Used to have a canine program up in Cloquet. Got cut last spring, maybe he's one of theirs." Hannah tried her phone, searching for any lost dog posts or missing canine alerts. Nothing matched. "He's too clean to be lost long, but he won't let me touch him, not really." Briggs shined his flashlight on the collar. "No tag, but there's a chip." He pulled a small scanner from the cruiser and swiped it over Maverick's neck. The device beeped, then flashed red. "Encrypted," Briggs muttered. "Can't read it. Not normal for a county K9. Might be military, or," he shrugged, "or something else." The wind picked up, carrying the sharp scent of diesel. Maverick stiffened, eyes shifting to a dark pickup parked farther down the road. The vehicle's headlights blinked once, then faded as it rolled away. "See that?" Hannah whispered. Briggs nodded. "That's not a local plate. We get poachers, sure, but—" He shook his head, uneasy. "Best not stand around out here. Why don't you take him back to your folks' place? I'll run his chip with the state office." Hannah hesitated. Maverick seemed to decide for her. With a quiet whine, he walked to her passenger door and sat, waiting. Briggs grinned, the lines in his face deepening. He's picked his ride. Hannah opened the door, and Maverick hopped in, settling with a disciplined, almost regal calm. She slid behind the wheel, cranking the heat. "All right, officer," she joked, forcing a smile. "Let's see if you're house-trained." As she pulled away, headlights flashed again in the rear view. The same pickup. The sense of being watched crawled up her spine. She tried to focus on the road, but Maverick was watching her, not out the window, studying her the way a trainer might study a recruit. She glanced down. "You got secrets, don't you?" Maverick huffed, almost a sigh. At the Walsh cabin, Hannah let them inside. The living room was chilly, wood stove cold. Maverick walked a slow circle around the room, nose working, inspecting every corner before finally settling near the hearth. He sat, ears swiveling, eyes trained on the window. Hannah tossed a blanket over the couch and set a bowl of water on the floor. Maverick sniffed it but waited until she sat down before drinking. She watched him in the dim light, feeling something shift inside her, a fragile thread of trust, spun between two creatures lost in the night. The silence was broken by a phone buzz. "Sheriff Briggs. Ran the plate. Out-of-state rental. Nothing good ever comes from that. Lock your doors tonight." She stared at the message, a chill colder than the wind settling over her. Maverick, as if sensing her fear, stood and pressed his head against her leg. "You're not just a stray," Hannah whispered, running her hand over his fur. "You're here for a reason." Maverick closed his eyes, breathing in the sense of hearth and home, letting the long night fall away. If only for a moment. But out in the pines, headlights flickered once, then vanished, and the dark waited, restless. Hannah couldn't sleep, not really. She set a fire in the stove, watching the flames flicker and dance while Maverick kept his vigil near the window. Every so often his ears would twitch at some sound she couldn't hear, a branch tapping the roof maybe, or an owl calling from the woods. There was a hush about the place, the kind that only settled on nights when you knew you weren't quite alone in the world. She pulled a faded quilt around her shoulders and poured herself a mug of tea. It was the same mug Sam had used the last time he'd come home, and she turned it in her hands, tracing the crack in the handle with her thumb. There was comfort in old routines, even when everything else had changed. Outside, the cold pressed against the windows. Frost bloomed in ghostly patterns along the glass. Maverick watched the road, eyes never blinking, nose pressed close enough that his breath fogged the pain. "Are you always like this?" she asked softly, as if he could answer. "Always waiting for the next thing to go wrong?" He looked back at her, amber eyes reflecting the firelight. She almost smiled. "Yeah," she said. "Me too." The clock crept past 2 a.m. when she finally gave up on the idea of sleep and started pulling out the folders from her backpack. Maps of the county, old news clippings, police bulletins she'd begged from Briggs. Sam's name was on most of them, or at least the last place he'd been seen. A gas station off County Road 8, a check-in at a diner in Grand Marais, a security camera photo that showed nothing but the back of his head and a black jacket. She'd come home to find him. That was the truth of it. Nobody else was looking. Not anymore. Sam was just another name on the list, and people had their own problems. But not her. She owed him that much. Maverick padded over, lying down beside her with his head on his paws, eyes tracking her hands as she moved papers around the faded rug. When she pulled out the blurry still of the gas station, Maverick's ears pricked up. He let out a low whine, shifting closer, nose bumping the photo as if trying to tell her something. "You know him?" she whispered, staring at the dog. The idea was crazy, but in that moment, it felt less impossible than everything else. He nudged the photo again, then looked at her, tail thumping once. Hannah watched him, searching his face for meaning, for anything. Maybe it was the exhaustion, but she felt a chill move down her spine. She decided on impulse to search Sam's name online again. There was nothing new but a mention of a break-in at an animal shelter outside Duluth, just days ago. 3 dogs missing. One matching Maverick's description. She turned to him. "You were there, weren't you? Is that where you came from?" Maverick only sighed, pressing his chin into her lap. He was warm and solid, and for the first time in weeks, Hannah let herself cry. It was the kind of crying you do when you know nobody's listening. Silent, shoulders shaking, face buried in a dog's fur because you're too tired to care if anyone sees. Maverick licked her hand, not making a sound, just staying close the way dogs do when they know something in you is breaking. The hours slipped by. Sometime before dawn, Maverick's head shot up, eyes locking onto the road outside. Hannah wiped her face and stood, following his gaze. Out in the pre-dawn blue, headlights glimmered, slow, cautious, moving up the drive. The car stopped at the gate, idling with its lights off. Maverick moved to the door, muscles tense, body low and ready. Hannah slipped quietly to the window, peering through a gap in the curtain. A figure stepped out of the car, a tall man, heavy coat, moving with careful, deliberate steps. He carried something in his hand, maybe a flashlight, maybe not. He paused at the gate, looking back over his shoulder before reaching for the latch. Hannah's heart raced. She fumbled for her phone, fingers shaking as she dialed Briggs's number. Voicemail. She texted instead, "Someone's here. Not you. Come quick." Maverick gave a low growl, barely audible, but enough to let her know he was ready. She opened the hall closet, pulling out her father's old baseball bat. Not much use, maybe, but better than nothing. The man made his way up the path, shoes crunching frost. He stopped just outside the porch, knocking, 3 sharp raps. Hannah swallowed hard, backing up as Maverick positioned himself between her and the door. "Who is it?" she called, voice steadier than she felt. No answer, just another knock. She reached for the porch light, flicking it on. The man squinted against the glare, lifting his free hand. "It's Sheriff Briggs." His voice was gruff but familiar, tinged with concern. "Sorry for the scare, Han. Just got your message. I saw a car parked up the road, figured I'd check it out." She exhaled in relief, unlocking the door. Maverick relaxed a fraction but still watched Briggs warily. Briggs stepped inside, stomping his boots. "Didn't mean to spook you. I saw the car, but whoever was in it must have cleared out when they saw my lights." He knelt beside Maverick, scratching his ears. "You got a real protector here. He kept watch the whole time I was outside." Hannah tried to smile. "He's not really mine. Not sure who he belongs to. Briggs stood, surveying the mess of papers on the floor. Looks like you're working overtime again, she shrugged. Did you find anything on his chip? Briggs shook his head. State database is locked, too much encryption for their equipment. I put in a request to St. Paul, but with the budget cuts, he trailed off, not bothering to finish. He looked out the window. Whoever left that car was watching. I could feel it, probably not just passing through. You need to be careful. Maverick moved to the fireplace, laying down but keeping his eyes on the sheriff. Briggs glanced at the dog, then back to Hannah. You trust him? She nodded. I do. He smiled, genuine but sad. Good. Sometimes the only thing you can trust is a dog. He hesitated, voice dropping. Look, hon, I know you want answers about Sam, but you gotta be careful who you talk to. Not everyone wants you digging around. You get any weird calls, anyone comes sniffing. Call me first, all right? She nodded again, promising. Briggs lingered a moment, staring at the dog as if trying to remember something important. Let me know if anything changes, and keep the doors locked. After he left, Hannah double-checked the locks. Maverick resumed his place by the window. She watched him, feeling both safer and more exposed. The sun finally rose, pale gold through the trees. She made coffee and sat at the table, rubbing her temples. Maverick patted over, head nudging her elbow. She smiled, pouring a little into a bowl and adding milk. He sniffed, then drank, making her laugh. A small, real sound that cut through the tiredness. For a while, they sat together in the quiet. Hannah's phone buzzed, an email from the animal shelter. Please call us. Urgent. She dialed, listening as a tired voice answered. This is Duluth Rescue. You found one of our missing dogs? She hesitated. I think so. Big German Shepherd. Scars on his muzzle. Old police collar. The woman's voice sharpened. That's Maverick. He's special. Not just a rescue. The man who adopted him, Mark Dawson, he's missing too. The police came by, asked questions, but she trailed off, uncertain. Hannah's heart pounded. Missing since when? 3 days ago. He never picked up Maverick's meds, said he'd call, but... A pause. You be careful, miss. Maverick's a good dog, but sometimes good dogs get tangled in things that aren't their fault. After she hung up, Hannah sat for a long time, staring into her coffee. Maverick rested his head on her knee. She scratched his ears, voice soft. Looks like you and me. We're both looking for someone, aren't we? He wagged his tail, slow and deliberate. The day unfolded in fits and starts. Calls to the shelter, messages to Briggs, walks around the yard with Maverick always 2 steps ahead, nose to the ground. At dusk, she found him standing at the edge of the property, eyes fixed on the far tree line. Something moved in the shadows. Maverick tensed, growling low. Hannah squinted, heart hammering. A figure stood just beyond the light, watching, then slipped away into the woods, leaving only footprints in the fresh snow. Maverick barked once, deep in warning. Hannah knew in that instant that their journey was only beginning. Whatever had brought Maverick to her, whatever secrets hid in the cold, silent woods, she was part of it now. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Dawn broke over Ironwood County with a chill that cut through the old cabin's walls, painting the woods in faded silver and blue. Hannah lay awake in bed, tracing the cracks in her ceiling, listening to Maverick's steady breathing beside her door. For the first time since she came home, she wasn't alone, and that, oddly, made her both comforted and anxious. She replayed the night's events in her mind. The strange car on the road, the knock in the dark, Sheriff Briggs's warnings, the phone call from the shelter. As much as she wanted to believe Maverick's sudden appearance was a simple twist of fate, she knew better. In her world, things happened for a reason, even if the reason was hidden beneath layers of secrets. Maverick was up before her, tail thumping once as she shuffled into the kitchen, still half asleep. He watched as she filled his water bowl, pouring herself black coffee, neither of them in a hurry to break the morning quiet. They ate in silence. Hannah, a bowl of instant oats. Maverick, a cup of kibble laced with the last of his medicine. The radio played in the background. Farm reports, local gossip, someone talking about the mayor's fundraiser at the high school gym. In the middle of a traffic update, the DJ mentioned a missing man from Duluth, Mark Dawson, last seen driving a blue F-150, the same kind of truck that had passed by the cabin last night. Hannah's heart squeezed. She looked at Maverick, who had frozen mid-bite. The dog's gaze met hers, dark and searching, as if he understood every word. She turned up the radio, straining for details, but the segment ended, replaced by a country song about second chances and long roads home. She pulled on boots and a thick flannel, calling for Maverick. "Let's see what the morning brings," she said, voice thin. He trotted at her side, alert, nose twitching at every scent in the cold air. They started with a loop around the property. Frost crunched underfoot, the woods quiet, but for the chitter of chickadees and the distant rumble of a snowplow on the county road. Maverick led the way to the edge of the yard, where last night's footprints were still visible in the hard-packed snow, clear, human tracks, much too big for her own. She crouched beside them, pressing a gloved hand into the print. Whoever it was had waited in the dark, just watching. Maverick sniffed the trail, hackles raised, tail stiff. He looked back at her for permission. "Go on," she said quietly. He followed the trail, weaving through birch and pine, Hannah hurrying after. The prints moved toward the far end of her land, past the old well and into a thicket of brambles. There they disappeared at the road, washed out by the tracks of another vehicle, deep ruts pressed into the muddy shoulder. Hannah scanned the horizon. Nothing but empty road and the wide gray sky. They walked back in silence, Maverick circling the house, sniffing at windows and doors. When they returned inside, her phone buzzed, a text from Sheriff Briggs. "You okay this morning? Call me when you can," she replied. Hannah tried to steady her breathing, but the late-night dread settled on her chest like a physical weight. Every sound from the old cabin seemed sharper now, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the creak of wood contracting in the cold, the soft wind rattling the window panes. She reached for her phone, flicked through old pictures of her and Sam, childhood birthdays, messy snowball fights, and their last Thanksgiving together. Each image brought with it a wave of longing and the gnawing ache of loss. Maverick padded over, resting his head on her knee. She stroked his thick fur, the motion calming her nerves. He was more than just a dog now. He was a guardian, a silent confidant in the storm. She leaned down, whispering, "We'll find him, boy. I promise. I won't let them scare me off." The night dragged on. Hannah tried to sleep on the couch. Maverick curled at her feet, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw Sam's worried face from the photo in the envelope. Sometime near dawn, she drifted off into a fitful sleep, only to be jolted awake by a sharp, insistent bark. Maverick was at the front window, body rigid, eyes locked on something outside. Hannah grabbed Briggs's revolver, heart thudding as she crept to his side. Peering through the blinds, she caught sight of tire tracks cutting fresh through the snow at the edge of her drive. A single set of boot prints led halfway up the path, then veered off toward the trees, disappearing in the pale blue haze of early morning. A car door slammed in the distance, then the faint roar of an engine pulling away. She waited, muscles tense, until the silence settled again. Only then did she let out a breath. Maverick whined, pressing his body against her legs as if to say, "I saw them first." As the sun rose, Hannah called Sheriff Briggs, updating him in hushed tones. He promised to run a patrol by the house, but she could hear the frustration in his voice. "They're testing you," he warned, "trying to see how you react. Don't let them. Keep Maverick close and stay inside until I get there." She nodded, watching Maverick circle the living room, sniffing the air with growing agitation. Trying to focus, Hannah returned to her desk. Sifting through the jumbled pile of her brother's belongings, she found his battered notebook, flipping through scrawled pages, cryptic codes, hand-drawn maps, names she didn't recognize. One entry caught her eye: old quarry, south fence line, 2 a.m., lights, black SUV. She checked the date. It was the day before Sam went missing. Her pulse quickened. The quarry was less than 3 miles from her cabin, an old mining site long abandoned but often used by teens for bonfires and parties. Hannah glanced at Maverick. "Should we check it out?" she murmured, half expecting the dog to answer. Instead, Maverick nudged the notebook with his nose, then trotted to the door, tail wagging once, ready. She bundled up, slinging Briggs's revolver in her coat pocket. Maverick wore his old canine collar, the metal tag clinking softly as they made their way down the icy path. The cold bit at her cheeks, but adrenaline kept her moving. The hike to the quarry was silent except for their crunching footsteps. Maverick led the way, nose low to the ground, pausing at every scent. As they neared the southern fence line, he froze, ears forward, body taut. Hannah crouched beside him, scanning the area. The snow was disturbed. Boot prints, tire tracks, a patch of ground swept clean. In the center of the clearing, she found a burned-out flare, its casing stamped with a serial number. She took photos, heart racing. Maverick sniffed around the old fire pit, then suddenly began to dig, paws churning up cold earth. Beneath the snow, he uncovered a torn piece of fabric, navy blue, with a bit of reflective tape sewn to the edge. Hannah's breath caught. It was from Sam's winter jacket. Tears pricked her eyes. She sank to her knees, clutching the fabric as Maverick pressed close, whining softly. They lingered in the clearing, searching for more clues. Maverick barked once, sharp and urgent, then bounded to a patch of trees where something metallic glinted in the snow. Hannah followed, finding a small digital recorder half buried beneath a drift. Hands shaking, she pocketed it, praying it still worked. On the walk back, Hannah felt exposed, every snap of a twig a possible threat. Maverick walked ahead, scanning the woods, never straying more than a few feet from her side. Back at the cabin, she replayed the recorder's contents. At first, only static, then muffled voices, the roar of engines and Sam's unmistakable tone, anxious and low. "If you find this, something's wrong. They know I'm close. Watch the south line. Don't trust anyone. North Star." Static again. Then silence. Hannah's knees buckled. Maverick licked her face, his body pressed tight to hers, unwavering. The day blurred into a swirl of fear and resolve. Briggs called to check in, promising to stop by after his shift. Hannah didn't mention the quarry, not yet. Something told her to keep this discovery close. As evening fell, she set to work, scanning Sam's maps, trying to find patterns, cross-referencing names and places. Maverick dozed at her feet, but every time she paused, he would lift his head and stare at her, as if urging her onward. After dinner, Hannah made a decision. She texted the one person she'd avoided since returning home, Ellie Carter, her old friend and a reporter at the local paper. "Ellie, need your help. Off the record. Call me." Within minutes, her phone rang. Ellie's voice was sharp with curiosity and concern. "Han, what's going on? People say you're back and the sheriff's been sniffing around." Hannah hesitated, then spilled everything. The abandoned dog, Sam's disappearance, the threats, the quarry, the fabric, the recorder. Ellie was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Meet me at my office tomorrow, early. Bring everything." Hannah agreed, a knot of dread and hope tightening in her chest. After hanging up, she turned to Maverick. "We're not in this alone anymore, boy." That night, as the wind howled outside and the wood stove glowed in the darkness, Hannah lay awake, Maverick curled at her feet, her brother's voice echoing in her mind. "If you find this..." She clutched the recorder, staring at the ceiling, promising herself and Sam that she would follow every lead, no matter the danger. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in silence. Inside, a bond was forming, between a woman determined to find her brother and a dog who had lost his own. And in that small, snowbound cabin, the first sparks of resistance flickered to life. Hannah didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew she wouldn't face it alone. The sun had barely risen over the pines when Hannah loaded Maverick into her battered Ford and headed for the center of Millfield. The previous night's discoveries still echoed in her mind. The torn fabric, the cryptic recording, the knowledge that Sam had been close to something dangerous before vanishing. She hadn't slept more than an hour, and her nerves were raw, but the thought of doing nothing was far worse. Downtown Millfield looked the same as it had when she'd left for college. 2 rows of aging storefronts, an old diner on the corner, the courthouse with its peeling white columns. But now, every shadow seemed to hold secrets. Every face was a potential threat or ally. She parked in the alley behind the Millfield Gazette, shouldering her backpack and glancing at Maverick. He sat tall in the passenger seat, ears forward, alert to every movement. "Stay," she whispered, locking the doors. Back in a few. Inside, Ellie Carter's office was a clutter of headlines and half-empty coffee mugs. Ellie herself was hunched over her computer, her red hair pulled into a messy bun, tapping out an editorial. She looked up as Hannah entered, surprise and relief flickering across her face. "Jesus, Han, you look like hell. Sit, talk." Hannah slid into the worn armchair and unloaded everything, the fabric scrap, Sam's battered notebook, the digital recorder. Ellie listened, her brow furrowing deeper with every detail. When the recording finished, she leaned back, chewing her lip. This is huge, Han. But if what you're saying is true, you can't trust anybody. Not even the sheriff. You realize that, right? Hannah nodded grimly. I'm not sure who to trust, except Maverick. Ellie cracked a tired smile. That dog's got better instincts than most people I know. She tapped the notebook. I'll cross-reference these names with some sources. And the flare casing, let me call my cousin at the state police lab. If it's issued for special use, we might get a lead. A beat passed, heavy with unspoken worries. You're in deep, Ellie said softly. Sam always was, but you're braver than you look. Hannah shook her head. Not brave, just stubborn. Ellie reached over and squeezed her hand. I'll help, but you gotta keep your head down. If someone's been watching your place, they're probably watching you here too. They devised a plan. Ellie would dig quietly, asking questions without tipping her hand. Hannah would focus on Sam's maps and the coordinates he'd marked, especially the reference to North Star. Before leaving, Ellie handed her a burner phone. Use this if you need me. Don't use your cell. Back at the truck, Maverick greeted her with a soft woof, his tail thumping the seat. She ruffled his ears, letting the comfort of his presence settle her nerves. They drove toward the edge of town, following one of Sam's marked routes. The landscape grew wilder. Craggy hills, narrow dirt roads, the skeletons of old mining equipment rusting in the brush. Maverick grew restless, nose twitching as the air shifted. After half an hour, they stopped at a weathered sign. North Star mining site. Danger. Keep out. The site was fenced with sagging chain link, but a section had been bent back, recently by the look of it. Hannah parked out of sight and climbed through the gap, Maverick close at her side. Inside, the old quarry yawned wide and silent, a lake of black water in the pit's center. She followed Sam's notes, circling east to where he'd scrawled cabin and antenna on his map. They found it, a small shack half buried in overgrowth, its door hanging off the hinges. Hannah hesitated, then stepped inside. Dust danced in the shafts of sunlight slanting through the roof. The place looked deserted, but Maverick's body went taut, hackles raised. She scanned the interior, old radio equipment, a cot, footprints in the dust. On the table, a folder stuffed with photographs and maps. Hannah's breath caught as she sifted through the images. There were shots of the sheriff's office, men in unmarked cars, and one photo of Sam, standing in the doorway of this very shack, his face tense, eyes wary. Maverick whined, circling the far wall. Suddenly he barked, pawing at a loose floorboard. Hannah knelt, prying it up with her knife. Inside was a plastic bag containing a flash drive and a single page. If anything happens, trust North Star S. Heart hammering, Hannah pocketed the bag. She was about to leave when a noise outside froze her in place. A branch snapped, followed by the crunch of footsteps. Maverick pressed against her, silent and alert. She peeked through the window, catching a glimpse of two figures moving stealthily along the fence. One held a walkie-talkie, the other scanned the ground with a flashlight. Hannah's mind raced. If these were the people Sam had warned about, getting caught here could be fatal. She grabbed the flash drive, stuffed the folder into her backpack, and motioned Maverick toward the back window. They slipped outside, crouching low as they made for the trees. The men's voices drifted through the air. You sure she's here? I saw the truck. That's her dog. Cop dog, right? Orders are clear. If she finds the drive, we take her in. Hannah's heart thudded as she moved quietly through the brush, Maverick leading the way. A stick snapped under her boot. Instantly, one of the men called out, "Hey, over here." Hannah and Maverick broke into a run. Bullets snapped through the undergrowth. She ducked, zigzagging between trees, Maverick always just ahead. They reached the fence, and Maverick lunged through the gap first. Hannah followed, scraping her arms but barely noticing. She dove behind her truck as the men burst from the woods, searching, shouting. She fumbled for the keys, heart pounding. Maverick barked, then sprang into the cab as she fired up the engine and tore away, gravel spraying. In her rearview mirror, she saw the men clamber into a black SUV, giving chase. She gunned the engine, weaving through back roads, Maverick's panting breath loud in the confined space. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ellie. "Be careful, something's happening. Call me." She tossed the phone aside, focusing on the winding road. The SUV loomed closer. Maverick barked, eyes locked on the mirror. Hannah saw a glint, a gun raised from the passenger window. She jerked the wheel, slamming into a side road that led through dense forest. The truck bounced and rattled, branches clawing at the paint, but the SUV struggled to follow. Finally, the trees grew too dense for the bigger vehicle. She barreled out onto a dirt road, tires screaming as she found her way back toward Millfield. Only when she was sure she wasn't being followed did she slow down, gasping for breath. She pulled over, shaking, and wrapped her arms around Maverick. "You saved me again, boy. I owe you my life." He licked her face, tail wagging, as if to say, "We're a team, always." When they finally made it home, Hannah checked the flash drive on her old laptop, the screen flickering to life. A series of files opened, hidden surveillance footage, lists of names, transactions, coded messages. At the heart of it all, a plan to use the North Star mining site for illegal weapons storage, with the sheriff and several local officials implicated. The evidence was explosive. It explained why Sam had vanished and why so many people wanted Hannah gone. She called Ellie on the burner, voice shaking. "You need to see this. It's bigger than we thought." Ellie agreed to come by after dark, bringing a portable scanner and encrypted drives. As the sun set, Maverick remained vigilant, pacing the house, eyes fixed on every shadow. Hannah watched the evidence upload, mind spinning with possibilities. They had the proof, but could they trust the right people to act? That night, as Ellie arrived, the three of them huddled over the laptop, piecing together the conspiracy. Maverick lay between them, head on his paws but ears always alert. The bond among them felt like armor against the darkness closing in. Ellie murmured, "We need to go to the state police. The feds, maybe." Hannah nodded. "But not yet. They'll be watching. We need to set a trap, force them into the open." Maverick thumped his tail as if in agreement. As midnight crept in, headlights flared at the end of the drive. Maverick growled, low and menacing. Hannah checked the gun, met Ellie's worried gaze and whispered, "It's time." She stepped into the darkness, Maverick at her side, a woman and her dog, facing down the shadowy forces that had stolen her brother. She was scared. But she was no longer alone, and as the night pressed in, the stage was set for the reckoning to come. The headlights outside Hannah's home flickered off, plunging the yard into shadow. Ellie's hand trembled slightly as she snapped the laptop shut and reached for her pepper spray, eyes wide behind her glasses. "Who do you think it is?" she whispered. "Doesn't matter," Hannah replied, trying to steady her voice as she peered through the blinds. Maverick sat at her feet, body rigid, teeth bared in a silent snarl. "We stick to the plan." Outside, a car door opened. Footsteps crunched on the gravel. Maverick growled, a low thunder that made Hannah's heart skip. Her mind raced. Could it be the men from the quarry? Or was it just a neighbor coming home late? She reached for her father's old shotgun, loading it with shaking hands. Ellie's breath hitched. The footsteps drew closer, then paused. There was a sharp knock at the front door. "Millfield Sheriff's Department," barked a voice. Hannah and Ellie traded a look. The sheriff himself, or one of his deputies? Maverick pressed his muzzle to the door, growling so low it vibrated the floorboards. "Open up! We just need to ask you a few questions." Hannah hesitated, her mind a jumble of Sam's warnings, Ellie's advice, and Maverick's instincts. She glanced at her phone, remembered the files on the drive. Too much was at stake to trust blindly. She called out, "Just a second," and motioned Ellie and Maverick toward the back door. In a whisper she said, "If I say go, take the flash drive and get to the woods. I'll hold them off." Before Ellie could answer, Maverick nudged Hannah's thigh as if reassuring her. He wouldn't leave her. Not now, not ever. She opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. Two men stood on the porch, their uniforms crisp, but their faces hard. The older, stockier one stepped forward, badge gleaming. "Miss Shaw, we're following up on a disturbance at the North Star site. Your truck was seen near the property. You mind telling us what you were doing out there?" Hannah forced a polite smile. "I was hiking. Didn't realize it was off limits." The younger deputy eyed her suspiciously. "You alone?" Before she could answer, Maverick pushed past her knees and stood in the doorway. Fur bristling, both men stepped back. "Jesus, that's a big dog," the deputy muttered. "Retired police K9, Hannah said, voice steady. "He doesn't like strangers at the door, especially late at night." The sheriff's eyes narrowed, lingering on Maverick's scars and steady posture. "You sure you were just hiking, Miss Shaw?" I'm sure, she replied. Is that all? He looked at her a long moment, then nodded. Let us know if you see anything unusual. They turned and walked back to their cruiser. Hannah closed the door, locking it tight, chest pounding. Ellie let out a shaky laugh. That was too close. They're on to us, Hannah said. We need to move. We can't stay here tonight. They packed what they could. Laptop, drive, Sam's notes, a few essentials. Maverick waited by the back door, ever vigilant. Hannah grabbed the burner phone, texting Ellie's cousin at the state police. Need safe place, have proof, urgent. Minutes later, a reply buzzed. Old ranger station off Pine Ridge. Use trail, not main road. They slipped into the darkness, Maverick leading the way. The night air was cool, sharp with the scent of pine and distant rain. Hannah's nerves screamed with every snapping twig, every distant car. They trekked the narrow trail by flashlight, Ellie breathing hard behind her. Are you sure about this? Ellie whispered, voice small in the vastness. No choice, Hannah answered, glancing at Maverick, whose tail was up, nose to the ground. Sam trusted North Star. I trust Maverick. At the old ranger station, Ellie's cousin Tom was waiting. A tall man with salt and pepper hair, a deep voice, and the look of someone who'd seen too much. He ushered them inside, double-bolting the door. State police have had their suspicions for a while, he said quietly. Your brother was right. Something's been going down at North Star, and the sheriff's office isn't clean. You girls stay here. I'll get this to my contact at the bureau, but you have to be careful. They've got eyes everywhere. He scanned the files on the laptop, whistling low. This is more than enough. Weapons trafficking, payoffs, names, enough to bring the whole operation down. As Tom prepared the files for secure transmission, Maverick circled the cabin, checking windows and doors, every sense on high alert. Ellie poured herself a cup of stale coffee and tried to smile. Guess we're real reporters now, huh? Hannah almost laughed, but the tension was too much. She knelt beside Maverick, burying her face in his fur. We're almost there, boy, she murmured, just a little longer. Outside, thunder rumbled, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Inside the station, the only light was from Tom's laptop and the red glow of Maverick's eyes in the dark. As midnight crept in, Tom nodded. Files are sent, feds will move fast, but the sheriff's got friends. Don't let your guard down. Hannah slumped in relief. For the first time, hope flickered. Suddenly, headlights swept the yard, harsh and blinding. Tom killed the lights. Quiet, stay down. Men's voices echoed outside, angry, searching. A flashlight beam probed the windows. Maverick crouched at Hannah's side, silent, ready. A shadow loomed at the door, rattling the handle. Tom whispered, through the cellar, out back. Go. They scrambled down the creaking steps, the old wood groaning under their weight. Ellie clutched the laptop, Hannah gripped Sam's notes. Maverick moved ahead, every muscle coiled. They burst out into the storm, rain slashing down, the shouts of men behind them. They ran through the trees, feet slipping in mud, hearts pounding. Bullets cracked, tearing bark from trunks. Maverick darted left, barking a warning. They followed, plunging through the underbrush, not daring to look back. When they finally collapsed beneath a fallen log, gasping for breath, Maverick circled and pressed against them, eyes bright, tongue lolling. Hannah hugged him tight, tears mixing with rain. Ellie clutched her hand. We did it. We really did. For now, they had survived. As the storm raged, the three fugitives, 2 women and a dog, huddled in the darkness, hope flickering against the night. Tomorrow would bring a reckoning. But tonight, for the first time since Sam disappeared, Hannah believed they might actually win. The dawn after the storm was slow to arrive, its gray light crawling over Millfield like an exhausted animal. Hannah Shaw awoke on the forest floor beneath a massive fallen oak, mud streaked across her jeans. Maverick pressed protectively to her side. The world was eerily still. The only sounds were Ellie's slow breathing, the tick-tick of rainwater dripping from leaves, and the distant, faraway wail of sirens. For a moment, Hannah could almost believe the night had been a fever dream. The thunder, the desperate run, the shouting men, the gunshots splitting the silence. But Maverick's muddy paw on her arm and the throbbing ache in her knees told her otherwise. She blinked the sleep from her eyes, mind racing. We're alive. We have the evidence. But for how long? Ellie stirred and sat up, shivering. Did you sleep at all? She whispered. Hannah managed a wry smile. Not much. You? Ellie shook her head. Nightmares. Kept dreaming I was back in high school gym class. Naked. Despite herself, Hannah snorted. That's one way to dodge the feds. Maverick sneezed and shook himself, spraying both women with droplets. Ellie laughed, a raw, nervous sound, but it was real. For a few seconds, the world seemed almost normal, but reality crashed back in with the crunch of footsteps on wet leaves. Maverick stiffened, ears pricked, low rumble deep in his chest. Hannah froze, listening. One person, boots, not running. She pressed a hand to Ellie's shoulder. A figure emerged between the trees. Tom Harris, Ellie's cousin, his face drawn and serious. He raised a hand in greeting. It's clear. The patrols passed through an hour ago, but nobody doubled back. We should get moving. They climbed out from their hiding spot, legs stiff and sore. Maverick scouted ahead, his nose pressed to the damp ground, pausing now and then to check over his shoulder as if to say, I've got this, but hurry up. Tom led them east, keeping low. The feds are working fast, but the sheriff's boys have gone to ground, and I heard chatter. They think you're armed and dangerous, Ellie snorted. Us? With what, sarcasm and a rescue dog? Don't underestimate sarcasm, Hannah replied. It's gotten me through worse. They made their way to an old farmhouse set back from the main road, hidden by wild blackberry thickets. Tom had been using it as a safe house for months. Inside, the air was musty but warm, with faded quilts and cracked porcelain doorknobs. A faded American flag hung above the mantel. Maverick circled the rooms twice, tail up, before lying in the doorway. Ellie collapsed on the sofa, covering her face. I never wanted to be a fugitive. Hannah knelt, checked the window. You're not, we're witnesses. Tom set down a battered duffel bag on the kitchen table and pulled out a police radio. We'll lay low. My contact in the bureau says they're prepping warrants. It won't be long. Hannah nodded, trying to shake off the anxiety tightening around her chest. What about the files? Tom pulled out a burner phone. Already en route to Quantico. But there's something else. Last night, the sheriff's office put out an APB on Maverick. Ellie blinked. You're kidding. On a dog? Tom looked grave. They called him a dangerous asset. They know he's not just any mutt. And, he paused, fishing out a laminated badge. This was in the mailbox. He handed it to Hannah. It was Sam's old ID, with a note paper clipped. Trust the dog. Follow his lead. Hannah's throat tightened. Sam? Tom nodded. He's alive. Deep cover. He's trying to help, but he can't break cover until we're safe. Ellie wiped her eyes. So what now? Tom glanced at his watch. We wait for a signal. When the time's right, we'll move. The hours ticked by in slow motion. Maverick prowled the windows, ever alert. Hannah busied herself checking the files on the drive, mapping out the connections between North Star's shell companies, dirty deputies, and the endless stream of encrypted bank accounts. Each name was another piece of the puzzle. Each face was another secret. Sometime after noon, a text buzzed on Tom's burner. Move. Safe route marked. Warehouse at 5th and Maple. Go now. Hannah packed the drive. Ellie grabbed her laptop, and Tom slung the duffel over his shoulder. Keep your heads down. Trust Maverick. They slipped out the back, through tangled brush, under a sky thick with bruised clouds. Maverick led the way, zigzagging through yards, down alleys, sometimes pausing as if listening to a sound no one else could hear. At the warehouse, a battered blue sedan waited in the lot. The driver was a woman in her late 30s, broad-shouldered, steely-eyed, wearing jeans and a Red Sox cap. Name's Rita. I'm with the bureau. Get in. No one hesitated. Maverick jumped into the backseat beside Ellie, tongue lolling. Rita peeled out, eyes scanning the rear view. There's a meetup a mile out. You'll be safe. The dog's the key, right? Hannah nodded, clutching Maverick's collar. He's got more training than most humans, Rita grinned. I can believe it. They weaved through back roads and empty fields, finally stopping at a remote trailer in the shadow of old grain silos. Inside, 2 FBI agents, one young, clean-cut, the other silver-haired and sharp as a tack, waited by a table scattered with files, radios, and half-empty coffee cups. Rita introduced them. Special Agents Jensen and Morales. They've been tracking North Star for months. Morales studied Maverick, then turned to Hannah. We know about your brother, about the whistleblower program. You're not in trouble. In fact, you might be the ones who blow this whole case wide open. Ellie opened her laptop, hands trembling but determined. Here's everything. Emails, wire transfers, photos, the works. Jensen nodded. We'll need statements from both of you and the dog. Well, let's just say we're arranging for a very special interview. Morales chuckled. I've seen a lot of things in my career, but a canine that can do what Maverick does, that's a first. While the agents reviewed files and prepped affidavits, Hannah stepped outside, breathing in the fresh country air. Maverick followed, pressing his head to her thigh. She knelt and hugged him fiercely, heart pounding with gratitude and fear. I don't know what happens next, boy, she whispered, but we made it this far. A black SUV roared up the drive, gravel spitting. Morales and Jensen appeared in the doorway, guns drawn. Stay back, Morales shouted. But instead of the sheriff's men, a tall figure emerged from the SUV, hands raised. It was Sam, alive, battered but grinning. Hannah ran to him, tears streaking her face. Sam, he pulled her into a hug, voice trembling. You did it, sis, you really did. Maverick barked and jumped, tail wagging like a puppy. Tom, Ellie, and the agents surrounded them, faces shining with relief. But the celebration was short-lived. Morales' phone buzzed, a coded message. It's not over yet. The sheriff and his boys know we're here. They're coming and they're desperate. Inside, Rita briefed everyone. We have backup coming, but you'll need to hold out. Maverick, whatever he's carrying, whatever he's trained for, it's time. The final act of the drama was about to unfold. The barn became a fortress. Tom set up barricades, Morales organized lines of defense, Ellie checked and double-checked the flash drives, and Hannah checked every window. Sam and Hannah, reunited, strategized with the FBI. Maverick stood at the center, head high, body quivering with anticipation. This was what he was trained for. As dusk bled into night, the sound of engines in the distance set every nerve on edge. The fate of everyone inside, and the truth, would be decided before sunrise. The world outside the barn was changing fast. From a narrow slit between the old warped boards, Hannah could see headlights weaving through the dark, bouncing down the dirt road that led to their hideout. Maverick stood beside her, unmoving, eyes fixed on the approaching lights, every muscle taut and alert. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. No one was panicking, not even Ellie. But there was a sense that the choices they made in the next few hours would change their lives forever. The agents worked with grim efficiency, triple-checking weapons, phones, radios. Sam helped Tom flip heavy tables and hay bales into makeshift barricades. The air smelled of old straw, motor oil, and something else, adrenaline, the electric taste of fear and hope mixed together. Hannah crouched by Maverick, running a hand through his fur. You know what's coming, don't you, boy? He turned, tongue flicking out, and nuzzled her hand. There was something almost human in his calm, as if he was telling her, we've come too far to quit now. Morales gave them a rundown. When the sheriff's people come, they'll try to separate us. Stay together, and don't let Maverick out of your sight. If he's as smart as you say, he'll know what to do. Rita handed Hannah a small flash drive. If anything happens, you get this to the state police barracks in Dry Creek. Ask for Captain Lewis, she's clean. Ellie was staring at the laptop, running one last decryption pass. There's something odd, she said. One of these files has a live GPS tracker embedded in it. I think someone's using it to pinpoint our location. Tom swore softly. How long? Ellie shook her head. Not sure, maybe minutes. Hannah's heart dropped. We've got to move. If they're tracking us. Sam cut her off, voice steady. No, if we run, they'll pick us off on the road. Here, we can hold them until backup arrives. Maverick's ears snapped forward. Somewhere out in the night, a distant dog barked, a warning or a signal. Lights swept the field. Shadows flickered across the walls. The whine of an engine idling. A voice rang out, distorted by a megaphone. This is Sheriff Doyle. Come out with your hands up and no one gets hurt. Inside the barn, the group went silent. Hannah met Sam's gaze. We're not going out there, he grinned. Wouldn't dream of it. Morales flicked off the lights. Let's make this as hard for them as possible. The next hour passed in a blur. Shouts from outside, the crackle of radios, the hollow boom of boots on the gravel. Ellie whispered prayers under her breath, clutching Maverick's collar. Tom paced the rear door, pistol in hand. Sam scribbled a quick note, just in case, and shoved it into his shirt. Suddenly, glass shattered. A canister bounced across the floor, spewing white smoke. Tear gas! Morales shouted. Hannah pulled her shirt over her mouth, eyes burning. Maverick, trained for chaos, stayed by her side, her anchor in the storm. Gunfire crackled outside. Bullets thudded into the barn walls, splintering wood and spraying dust. Morales and Rita returned fire, aiming high, making noise rather than killing. The point wasn't to win a shootout, it was to buy time. Sam darted to the laptop, snatching the hard drive. "Ellie, with me." Hannah followed, pressing close to Maverick, moving behind the barricades as another canister landed near the door. Maverick didn't flinch. Instead, he nudged Hannah towards a small hatch at the back of the barn, a storm door she hadn't even noticed before. Tom shouted, "That leads to the old cattle chute." "It's a tunnel." "Go," Morales yelled. "I'll hold them off." Hannah, Sam, and Ellie scrambled for the hatch. Maverick squeezed in first, moving with the confidence of a dog who'd done this before. The tunnel was low and cramped, dirt and straw pressing in on all sides. The sound of chaos faded behind them, replaced by their ragged breathing and the steady scrape of Maverick's paws. At the end of the chute, they emerged into a thicket of brambles by a shallow creek. Moonlight filtered through the trees. Hannah could hear the distant pop, pop, pop of gunfire, Morales and Rita still holding the line. Ellie's voice trembled. "We can't leave them." "We're not," Sam said, "but we can't help them if we get caught. Come on." They ran, splashing through the creek, branches slapping at their faces. Maverick stayed at Hannah's side, glancing back now and then, as if counting heads. On the far side of the woods, Tom waited with a pickup. He'd hot-wired it from the farm next door. They tumbled into the cab, Ellie clutching the laptop, Sam still gripping the drive. "Where to?" Tom asked. Hannah didn't hesitate. "Dry Creek, Captain Lewis." They tore down the back roads, headlights off, Maverick wedged between Hannah and the passenger door. Every few minutes, Sam checked his phone, watching for signals. Ellie worked feverishly on the laptop, scrubbing the GPS data. "Almost got it," she muttered. "Just a few more lines of code." Suddenly, a set of headlights appeared in the rear view. Tom swore and stomped the gas. The truck behind them picked up speed. Hannah looked back. Black SUV, unmarked, no plates. Maverick started barking, deep and fierce. "Hold on," Tom shouted, swinging the truck down a rutted dirt track. The SUV followed, headlights bobbing in the darkness. Ellie shouted, "We're being pinged. They've got our position." Sam pulled his sidearm. "If they get close, we ditch the truck and run." A shot rang out. The back window exploded in a spray of glass. Ellie screamed, ducking down. Hannah pulled Maverick close, shielding him with her body. Tom cut the wheel, fishtailing through mud and scrub. Up ahead, a wooden fence blocked the path. He floored it. The truck smashed through with a shudder. The SUV skidded, lost traction, spun out into a ditch. Hannah exhaled shakily. "We made it." Tom didn't slow down. Not yet. They barreled onto the county highway, headlights blazing, and raced toward the lights of Dry Creek. At the edge of town, Tom pulled into a gas station and killed the engine. "We walk from here. No more digital footprints." Ellie pocketed the laptop. Sam stowed the drive in his boot. Maverick led the way, nose down, trotting ahead as if he owned the night. Downtown Dry Creek was almost deserted at this hour, except for a pair of sheriff's cruisers parked outside the bar. They ducked down alleys, staying in the shadows, moving fast. At the state police barracks, Hannah marched up to the front desk, flash drive in hand. Maverick pressed close to her leg. A young officer looked up. "Can I help you?" "Captain Lewis," Hannah said. "It's urgent. Tell her it's about North Star." The officer hesitated, then picked up the phone. Moments later, a tall woman in uniform appeared, African-American, with close-cropped hair and a no-nonsense stare. "I'm Captain Lewis. You got something for me?" Hannah handed her the drive. "Everything you need to bring them down, but you need to move fast. The sheriff's coming." Lewis took one look at Maverick, then at Hannah. "I know who you are. Come with me and bring the dog." Inside, Lewis moved with speed and purpose. She ushered them into a secure room, locked the door, and called for backup. "Stay here. No one in or out unless I say so." Tom slumped into a chair. Ellie sobbed in relief. Sam grinned like a man who'd survived the impossible. Hannah buried her face in Maverick's neck, whispering her thanks. Outside, sirens wailed. The sheriff's men had arrived, but this time they weren't in charge. Captain Lewis moved like a force of nature, barking orders, calling in state and federal agents. In less than an hour, the crooked deputies were under arrest. North Star's offices were raided. News crews swarmed the street, the glow of their cameras washing over Hannah, Sam, Ellie, Tom, and Maverick, standing tall, calm, and proud, a hero at the center of it all. As dawn broke over Dry Creek, Hannah looked down at Maverick and smiled. "You did it, boy. We did it together." He wagged his tail, leaned into her side, and for the first time in days, closed his eyes. Content, safe, and finally home. The first light of dawn crept across Dry Creek, painting the town in pale gold and making the overnight chaos look almost peaceful. But inside the state police barracks, everything felt tense, like the quiet before a summer thunderstorm. Hannah stood by the window, eyes gritty from exhaustion, watching Captain Lewis orchestrate an operation that was now much bigger than anyone in the group could have imagined. In a back room turned makeshift safe house, Maverick curled at Hannah's feet, never truly asleep, always listening. Sam sat hunched over a police-issue laptop, typing furiously, his fingers flying as he pieced together everything they'd gathered. Ellie leaned against the wall, arms wrapped around herself, a tremor still in her voice from the night's terror. Tom paced the length of the small room, chewing his lip, every so often glancing at the door as if expecting it to burst open at any moment. Captain Lewis was in her element. She moved through the station like a general, commanding respect with her crisp tone and steady gaze. Hannah couldn't help but admire her. Here was someone who got things done, no matter the cost. Lewis strode in. "We're moving you to a more secure location. The media's circling, and the sheriff's people are still looking for a way to spin this in their favor." She knelt and scratched Maverick between the ears, her tough expression softening just a bit. "You're one hell of a dog, aren't you? Word's already gotten out about you, big guy." Maverick's tail thumped the floor, eyes shining with understanding. Sam's phone buzzed. He read the message and looked up, pale. "Guys, they're saying on social media that we kidnapped Maverick. The sheriff's department's trying to turn the whole town against us." Tom muttered a curse. "Of course they are. Classic misdirection. When you can't hide the truth, you try to muddy it." Lewis frowned, grabbing her own phone. "Don't worry, we'll get ahead of it. I'll call the state press office. You four, stay out of sight." But hiding wasn't so simple in a town where everyone knew everyone else. Within an hour, a crowd had gathered outside the station. Locals, reporters, a few angry faces shouting that Maverick should be returned to his real owners. Hannah felt her stomach knot as she peered through the blinds. Rita arrived, looking battered but determined, bruises blooming on her jaw, one arm in a sling. "I got out before they locked down the hospital," she said, voice rough. "Morales is still missing, but he's alive. I know it. He'd never go down without a fight." Ellie hugged her, both women shaking with relief and worry. Maverick nudged Rita's good hand, licking her fingers. She managed a small, grateful smile. A TV news van rolled up. Suddenly the crowd's energy shifted. People began chanting, a few started pounding on the glass. Sam stiffened. "They're trying to smoke us out. If we leave now, they'll eat us alive." Lewis burst in, face flushed. "Change of plans. We have to move you. Now. Use the old prisoner transfer tunnel. Move fast. Stay low." The group grabbed their things. Hannah clipped Maverick's leash and whispered, "Stay close, buddy." Downstairs, a heavy steel door led to the tunnel, a cold, damp passage that snaked under the parking lot, emerging blocks away at an abandoned post office. As they moved through the darkness, Tom kept an ear out for pursuit. "You sure about this, Cap?" he whispered. Lewis nodded, striding ahead with purpose. "No one but the chief and me knows about this tunnel. If we're lucky, they won't catch on until we're long gone." Emerging into the post office's shadows, the team paused, hearts thundering in their ears. Lewis handed Sam a burner phone. "If you're separated, call this number. My people will come." Ellie glanced over her shoulder. "What about Maverick? If the press keeps up their story..." Lewis put a hand on her shoulder. "I'll handle it. Just get yourselves to safety." They moved fast, slipping through side streets and alleyways, Maverick padding silently at Hannah's side. They reached a rundown motel on the outskirts, one of those places where no one asked questions, and huddled in a back room with grimy curtains and creaking beds. The day dragged on, slow and thick as honey. News alerts flashed on Sam's phone. Wild rumors, claims that Maverick was dangerous, that the North Star investigation was nothing but a baseless conspiracy. But there was hope, too. Videos began surfacing online. Shaky cell phone footage of the shootout at the barn, of Maverick leading Hannah and the others to safety. Hashtags started trending. Justice for Maverick, Truth in Dry Creek. People from all over the state posted support. Ellie refreshed the feed and smiled. We're not alone. People are waking up. That night, with rain rattling the window, Hannah finally let herself cry. She buried her face in Maverick's neck, hot tears soaking his fur. I don't know what comes next, she whispered, but I'm so glad I found you. He pressed closer, offering his silent, steadfast comfort. The next morning brought new threats and new allies. A black SUV pulled into the motel lot. Hannah tensed, but it was Captain Lewis and two plainclothes officers. Pack your things, it's time. They drove north out of Dry Creek, through red canyons and vast rolling plains. Lewis explained, We're taking you to the state capital. The governor's agreed to meet. He wants to hear your story himself, and meet Maverick. Hannah's heart pounded. You really think he'll listen? Lewis smiled, tight and weary. After the evidence you gathered, he'd be a fool not to. In the capital, things moved quickly. They met with the governor, a broad-shouldered man with a kindly southern drawl and sharp eyes. He shook each of their hands, then knelt beside Maverick, letting the dog sniff his palm. You're a hero, son, he said, voice deep and sincere. Sam handed over the flash drive, hard drive, and laptop. Ellie explained, with shaking hands, how they'd discovered North Star's network of corruption, how Maverick had helped them track the money, the files, the threats. Tom filled in gaps, describing the shootout and the barn standoff. Rita described Morales' courage. Hannah told her story last, how she'd found Maverick on that empty road, and how nothing had been the same since. The governor listened, never interrupting, just taking notes, nodding, asking the right questions. Finally, he looked at Captain Lewis. We need a task force. State police, feds, whoever you trust. I want North Star's leadership in custody by sundown tomorrow, and you. He turned to Hannah. Keep that dog close. He's safer with you than anyone else. Afterward, the governor gave a short televised address. To the people of Arizona, the truth will come out. I promise you that. The mood shifted statewide almost overnight. Journalists dug deeper. Whistleblowers started coming forward, men and women who'd been afraid to speak until now. And everywhere, people wanted to know more about Maverick, the police dog who'd risked everything for the truth. But the fight wasn't over. The next day, Captain Lewis brought grim news. Morales was found, alive but badly hurt. North Star loyalists are still on the move. There's evidence someone inside the State House is leaking our plans. Tom slammed his fist on the table. So it's not just Dry Creek, it's everywhere. Ellie looked at Hannah. What do we do now? Hannah squeezed Maverick's collar. We keep going. For Morales, for everyone North Star hurt, we finish what we started. That night, as rain lashed the city, Hannah lay awake with Maverick at her feet, heart pounding with fear and hope in equal measure. She thought of the empty road where their story began, the lonely stretch of desert that had felt like the end, and realized it was really the beginning. She drifted into uneasy sleep, the steady beat of Maverick's heart beneath her hand, and dreamt of the day they would finally be free. The next days in Phoenix felt like a fever dream. Too many faces, too much news, everything coming at Hannah and her unlikely crew faster than they could process. Word of the Maverick scandal swept across Arizona. TV anchors dissected every detail, conspiracy theorists spun their wildest tales, and in between it all, ordinary people sent cards and emails, thank yous, prayers, even home-baked treats delivered to the Capitol Police Post. But with the spotlight came new dangers. Ellie's phone buzzed non-stop with anonymous threats. Rita, stubborn as ever, insisted on visiting Morales in the hospital, despite being warned of North Star sympathizers lurking nearby. Tom was shadowed by a black SUV for a day straight, and Hannah felt the weight of every eye on her, even in the grocery store, even sitting in the park with Maverick, even in her sleep. She tried to focus on what mattered. Each morning she walked Maverick along the sun-baked sidewalks, the big shepherd keeping pace with her step for step, head high, always alert. Kids called out to pet him. Mothers smiled, some cried. Maverick bore it all with quiet grace, as if he understood his life wasn't his own anymore, that his story had become bigger than either of them. One evening, after the governor's emergency task force launched a series of high-profile raids, Hannah met with Sam and Ellie in a coffee shop. The three of them sat hunched in a back booth, their faces drawn, eyes ringed with fatigue. Sam opened his laptop, showing them new files he'd just decrypted from North Star's servers. It's worse than we thought. North Star's been buying off judges, funding fake charities, even running their own militia squads in rural counties. And they've got help, real political muscle. Ellie's hand shook as she lifted her coffee. Is it enough to bring them down? Sam shrugged, defeat in his eyes. If anything leaks before the indictments, they'll torch the evidence and vanish. We need someone on the inside to flip. A hush fell. Then Hannah said quietly, there's one person who knows everything, Sheriff Connolly. The name felt sour in her mouth, a ghost she'd hoped never to face again. Ellie looked up. He hates you. Yeah, but he hates being double-crossed more, Hannah replied, jaw set. If we can show him the proof, convince him he's just another pawn, maybe he'll turn. And if he does, the whole domino chain falls. Sam bit his lip. It's a hell of a risk. He could kill us, or hand us over to North Star. Hannah's eyes found Maverick, curled at her feet, as if sensing her worry. We don't have a choice. The next morning dawned gray and breathless. Hannah waited outside the sheriff's office with Maverick, a folder of evidence tucked under her arm. Tom and Ellie waited nearby in a borrowed pickup truck, ready to call for backup at the first sign of trouble. Sam monitored the police scanner, listening for coded chatter. Inside, the air was heavy with anticipation. Deputy Riley, one of the few honest cops left, snuck them in through a side door. She locked eyes with Hannah, worry plain on her face. He's in a mood. Be careful. Sheriff Connolly sat behind his battered desk, boots on the edge, a .45 holstered at his hip. He looked at Hannah like she was a bad penny that kept turning up. You got 5 minutes. Make it good. Hannah laid out the photos, the ledgers, the bank transfers, everything Sam had decrypted, and spoke in a voice that was steady, unafraid, even as her hands trembled. You're being played, Walt. North Star's using you. You think you're in control, but you're just another piece they'll sweep off the board when you're done. He stared at the files, silent for so long she wondered if he'd throw them back in her face. Maverick sat at her side, silent and still, eyes locked on the sheriff. Finally, Connolly spoke, voice low. I always knew they were crooks, but not like this. Not all the way to the top. Hannah pressed her advantage. Help us. Testify. You'll save your own skin, maybe even this town. He rubbed a hand over his jaw, torn between pride and fear. They'll come for me. Not if we're first, Tom said, stepping in from the hallway. We've got the governor, the feds. You have a chance to do one thing right. Connolly's face hardened. You bring this on my doorstep, you'd better finish it. He stood, gathering the files, and barked, wait here. As the sheriff left, Maverick pressed against Hannah's leg, tail rigid, nose twitching. Hannah waited, heart pounding, half expecting gunfire or betrayal. But 10 minutes later, Connolly returned with Deputy Riley and 2 other trusted deputies, old-timers who'd watched North Star's grip tighten for years. All right, he said, let's do this. The next 12 hours unfolded at a breakneck pace. Connolly made his statement, naming names and signing affidavits. The governor's task force moved fast, swooping down on North Star's headquarters and satellite offices. News crews scrambled, cameras whirring. Hannah and Maverick watched from the sidelines, adrenaline humming in their blood. That night, with half the state still awake, Captain Lewis called. We got him, she said, voice triumphant. It's over. But it wasn't over, not really. While officials crowed on TV and justice seemed close at hand, North Star's remaining loyalists went to ground. Mysterious threats flooded social media. Sam was doxxed, his family's address posted online. Ellie's car was vandalized. Tom's farm was set on fire, a warning no one could ignore. Rita, too, wasn't spared. Late one night, she was ambushed outside the hospital. 2 masked men shoved her into a van, but Maverick, who was waiting in the parking lot with Hannah, caught the scent and exploded into action. He lunged, teeth flashing, scattering the assailants and dragging Rita to safety as Hannah dialed 911, voice shaking with relief and rage. Rita hugged Maverick with both arms, tears streaking her face. You saved my life, you beautiful boy. I owe you everything. The state police doubled their protection, posting officers outside their homes and setting up surveillance. Hannah slept with a baseball bat by her bed, Maverick curled beside her, always alert to the slightest sound. Through it all, the bond between Hannah and Maverick deepened, something almost spiritual. She began to understand his moods, the subtle signals in his posture, his uncanny ability to sense both danger and hope. Sometimes, on sleepless nights, she'd rest her head on his shoulder and tell him her fears. He never judged, never flinched, just listened with soulful eyes. Yet the threat hung over them, like a summer storm refusing to break. Then, just as the team began to feel safe again, a coded email arrived from an anonymous address, one only Sam recognized as belonging to a whistleblower from his newspaper days. The message was chilling. North Star isn't finished. They have a backup plan. Trust no one. Someone close to you isn't who they say. Sam froze, reading it twice. He showed the message to Hannah, whose blood ran cold. Ellie and Tom came to the kitchen, Rita trailing behind. All of them crowded around the screen. "What does it mean?" Ellie whispered. Sam's jaw clenched. "It means someone in our circle is a mole." They stared at each other in stunned silence. Maverick's ears pricked, his body tensed. Suddenly, the room didn't feel safe anymore. The next days became a blur of suspicion and second-guessing. Every glance, every offhand comment was measured and weighed. Hannah's sleep grew fitful. Maverick prowled the house at night, growling at shadows, more watchful than ever. Tom suggested a test. "Let's plant false info, see who leaks it." They crafted a story. An email with a fake location for the final evidence drop, carefully timed and sent only to their inner circle. Then they waited. Less than 24 hours later, an unmarked black van was spotted near the fake drop site. Men in suits prowling the alley. Maverick watched from the shadows with Hannah, a low rumble in his chest. Tom's jaw tightened. "We got our answer." The group confronted Deputy Riley, who broke under pressure. Tears streaming, she confessed to being blackmailed, her son threatened by North Star if she didn't cooperate. Ellie hugged her, heartbroken. "You should have told us." Riley shook her head, sobbing. "I thought I could protect him. I'm so sorry." Despite the betrayal, Hannah found compassion. "Help us finish this. Tell us everything you know. We'll protect your son." With Riley's confession, they finally uncovered North Star's last hideout, a mountain compound stocked with weapons, cash, and files implicating powerful people far beyond Arizona. The task force struck at dawn. Helicopters thundered over the ridgeline, searchlights sweeping the compound. Hannah, against Lewis's wishes, went with them. Maverick at her side, head low, eyes burning with purpose. The raid was chaos. Gunfire cracked, men shouted, smoke grenades hissed. Hannah ducked behind a squad car, adrenaline surging. Maverick stayed close, weaving through the fray, never losing sight of her. She found herself in a dark hallway, heart hammering, when a masked figure lunged, knocking her down. She fought, hands clawing, and suddenly Maverick was there, slamming into the attacker, sending him crashing into the wall. "Hannah!" Sam's voice, desperate, echoing down the hall. "I'm here," she called, her voice shaking. When it was over, North Star's leaders were cuffed, guns confiscated, secrets laid bare for the world to see. Captain Lewis embraced Hannah, tears of pride and exhaustion streaking her face. "You did it, kid. You all did." Later, as the sun broke through the smoke, Hannah knelt beside Maverick, pressing her forehead to his. "You saved me. You saved all of us." Maverick licked her cheek, his eyes bright and warm, the bond between them unbreakable. But Hannah knew their fight wasn't just for themselves, but for every voiceless victim, every hidden truth, every person who ever thought the world too cruel to care. They'd survived together, and the world would never be the same. The dust was barely settled over Flagstaff when Hannah knew one thing for sure. The fight wasn't over. The headlines might have screamed North Star dismantled, but the shadows still held secrets, and the people who lurked there weren't ready to give up so easily. Hannah sat at the edge of the cliff overlooking the city, Maverick lying quietly beside her, ears twitching at every sound of the wind sweeping the red rocks. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, but her mind was anything but calm. There was an itch in her gut, a warning that the storm was coming again. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Sam. "We got a problem," he said, voice tight. "What now?" Hannah asked, bracing herself. "Leaks. Classified files from the operation just got dropped online. Someone's trying to sabotage the whole thing." Hannah's jaw clenched. "And you think it's an insider?" Sam sighed. "Hard to say, but whoever it is, they're good and dangerous." She looked down at Maverick, his dark eyes steady and unyielding. We've come too far to let this slip away. The next morning, the team gathered in the cramped living room of Hannah's rental, a place now half office, half war room. Rita was pacing, phone glued to her ear, while Tom poured coffee for everyone. Ellie dropped a thick manila envelope on the table. Found this in my inbox last night. Unsigned, contains surveillance footage from the night of the raid. They crowded around the laptop, watching grainy black and white clips. The camera shook slightly as it followed armed men moving cautiously through a dimly lit hallway. One figure stood out, a shadowy man in a dark suit, speaking quietly to the guards. "That's not from the task force," Tom said grimly. "Someone from the inside." Hannah tapped the screen, zooming in on the man's face. "Who is he?" Ellie scrolled through notes. "Unknown. But check this out." She played a snippet of audio, the man's voice, cold and clipped. "The package moves tonight. No mistakes." "Package?" Hannah echoed. "What package?" "Not sure," Ellie replied, "but we're about to find out." That night, under a moonless sky, Hannah and Maverick waited in the shadowed alley behind the old railway station. The air was thick with tension, and the only sound was the distant hum of freight trains rattling along the tracks. "Ready?" Tom whispered, handing her a small flashlight. Hannah nodded, heart pounding. Maverick's nose twitched, his body coiled like a spring. Minutes later, headlights flickered at the far end of the alley. A convoy of black SUVs slid silently into view, headlights off, engines almost inaudible. Hannah swallowed hard. From the shadows, the man from the footage emerged, flanked by two guards. The package he'd spoken of was a large metal case, heavy, locked tight. Hannah motioned to Tom and Ellie. "We move on my mark." The group slipped forward, shadows blending with the night. Maverick led, nose low, muscles tense. Suddenly, a dog barked, sharp, loud, piercing the silence. The convoy froze. The man's eyes darted. "Get down," he hissed. Gunfire erupted. Hannah dove behind a rusted dumpster, heart hammering. Maverick growled low, barreling into the attackers with fury born of years in the field. The alley turned into a battlefield. Shots echoed off brick walls, sparks flew as bullets grazed metal barrels. Ellie scrambled for her phone, calling for backup. Tom covered her, returning fire. The man in the suit disappeared into the maze of alleyways, the metal case clutched tight. Hannah chased after him, breath ragged, adrenaline fueling every step. "Stop!" she shouted. He glanced back, eyes wild, and pulled a pistol. A flash, a deafening crack. Hannah felt a searing pain, her legs buckling. Maverick was at her side instantly, nipping at the attacker's heels, forcing him back. Backup sirens wailed in the distance. At the hospital, the sterile white walls were a harsh contrast to the chaos of the night. Hannah lay in a bed, bandages wrapped tight around her thigh. Maverick rested his massive head on her chest, warmth radiating through the gloom. The doctors said she was lucky. The bullet had grazed muscle, missing major arteries. But the message was clear. North Star's reach was longer, their wrath deeper than anyone had imagined. Ellie sat beside her, face pale but determined. "We're not backing down," she promised. "Not now." Tom stood near the door, arms crossed, his usual gruff demeanor softened by worry. Hannah smiled weakly. "Maverick saved my life." The dog's tail thumped gently against the bedframe. Weeks passed with tension mounting. North Star had gone underground, their operatives like ghosts in the wind, whispering threats and leaving signs of their presence. But Hannah's team had grown stronger. New allies emerged. A tech wizard named Marcus, whose skills in hacking and encryption opened doors no one else could. And Detective Perez, a tough, no-nonsense cop with deep ties in the Phoenix PD, willing to risk everything to bring justice. Together they followed the trail of corruption. Money laundering schemes, hidden shell corporations, political puppeteers pulling strings from the shadows. Hannah worked tirelessly, juggling press conferences, strategy sessions, and sleepless nights. Maverick always by her side, the symbol of loyalty and courage. One evening, as the desert wind howled outside her window, Hannah sat reviewing a dossier Marcus had just sent. It contained names and dates. A smoking gun linking North Star to a powerful senator known for his public stance on law and order. "Looks like we just hit the jackpot," Marcus said, grinning. But the celebration was short-lived. An anonymous message arrived, chilling in its simplicity. "Stop digging, or you'll be next." The final confrontation loomed. In a remote canyon, under a brooding sky, Hannah and her team prepared to confront the heart of North Star's operation, a fortified compound nestled among jagged rocks. The air was thick with dust and tension. Maverick sniffed the wind, muscles coiled, ready to spring. With radios crackling and flashlights piercing the dark, they moved in silence. The compound was a fortress, bristling with armed guards and surveillance cameras. Hannah's heart pounded, but she knew this was their moment. Inside, they found evidence of illegal arms deals, human trafficking, and a chilling plan to destabilize local governments. As alarms blared and gunfire erupted, Maverick led the charge, navigating the chaos with instinct and training. Hannah faced the mastermind, the senator himself, caught red-handed in a room full of incriminating files. "Game's over," she said, voice steady despite the storm raging outside. He sneered. "You think this ends here?" "Not while I'm standing." Months later, with North Star dismantled and justice served, Hannah stood at a ceremony honoring Maverick and the team's bravery. The crowd cheered as she knelt beside her faithful companion, pride shining in her eyes. Maverick barked happily, tongue lolling, tail wagging. In the quiet moments afterward, Hannah whispered, "We did it, boy. Together." The bond between them, forged in fire, trust, and unyielding loyalty, was unbreakable. And as the sun set over the desert, painting the sky with hope, Hannah knew this was just the beginning of their journey. The dust had finally settled, but the echoes of the fight lingered in every corner of Flagstaff and beyond. Hannah sat on the porch of her modest home, the cool desert breeze brushing past her face as Maverick rested at her feet. The past months had been a whirlwind, a brutal test of courage, trust, and the unbreakable bond forged between a woman and her dog. But now, as the sun dipped low behind the distant mountains, there was a calm, a moment to reflect on everything that had come to pass. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a message from Detective Perez. Senator's resignation confirmed, federal grand jury proceeding next month, we're closing in. Hannah exhaled slowly, a mix of relief and anticipation flooding her chest. Justice wasn't just a word anymore. It was becoming real. Maverick lifted his head and looked up at her, eyes gleaming with the quiet intelligence that had seen them through so much. Hannah reached down and scratched behind his ears. "We did good, boy. Real good." But beneath that victory lay a truth that few understood. The system they'd torn apart wasn't just one corrupt senator or a shadowy crime syndicate. It was a tangled web of power, greed, and secrecy woven through the very fabric of their society. The digital guardian program, the secret dog training, the undercover ops, it was all just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Hannah knew their fight was far from over. The story had made headlines, stirring public outcry, but the deeper battles, the ones in dark rooms, behind closed doors, were still raging. She and Maverick had become symbols of hope, but also targets for those who thrived in the shadows. The morning air was crisp when Hannah met with Marcus and Ellie at the cafe near the university. Marcus's laptop was open, alive with data streams and encrypted chatter intercepted from unknown sources. "Even after Davidson's arrest, there's chatter about remnants of North Star regrouping," Marcus said, voice low. "They're moving fast, recruiting, expanding their reach beyond Arizona." Ellie tapped her phone, showing messages from anonymous informants. "And some of the new players, they've got ties to international networks, cybercrime, money laundering, you name it." Hannah took it all in, the weight settling heavy. "We busted the head, but the beast's still alive." Marcus nodded grimly. "Which means we need to keep pushing. Stay 2 steps ahead." Maverick lay at her feet, ears twitching at the low hum of the cafe's morning buzz. He was more than a partner, he was a guardian, a living symbol of resistance against unseen enemies. Later that week, Hannah found herself at a community center, surrounded by local kids and veterans. She'd started a program called Guardians of Tomorrow, pairing retired service dogs with kids in at-risk neighborhoods, giving them a chance to heal, to build trust, and maybe, just maybe, to inspire the next generation. As she spoke about loyalty, courage, and standing up for what's right, Maverick rested quietly beside her. The bond between them was clear to everyone, a testament to resilience and hope. One little boy raised his hand. "Miss Hannah, do you think I could be a hero someday like you and Maverick?" She smiled, heart swelling. "You already are." Back at home that night, Hannah stared out at the starry sky. The desert stretched endlessly, just like that night when everything changed. when she found Maverick abandoned on that lonely road. She reached down and rubbed his head gently. "You know, I never thanked you." Maverick looked up, tail wagging softly. "For leading me through all of it, for being more than just a dog, my partner." The silence between them was full of understanding. But as the peaceful night deepened, somewhere miles away, a shadow moved. A figure slipped into a darkened office, peeling off a mask and revealing the face of someone thought long gone. A master puppeteer pulling strings from behind the curtain. The war for truth and justice was far from over, and as long as people like Hannah and Maverick stood watch, the light would never fully fade. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, just drop a quick 0 in the comments below. I'd love to see who's here with me. Or type 1 if you believe in the power of loyalty and courage, like Hannah and Maverick. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next heartwarming and thrilling story. We've got plenty more incredible tales coming your way. Stories that show the amazing bond between people and animals and how they change lives. See you in the next video.